You can go hit and hold on. You can go and hit like pop up and then pin to. And I think we're live now. Yeah, we are.
Live?
Yeah, this is the best kind of live when I don't know it yet. Hello, makers of the world, coming to you live in spirit from I3 Detroit in the innovative Ferndale, Michigan. This is Make Something Wonderful podcast exploring all the fantastic ways we create. I'm Thomas Tusano.
This week we have kind of an unusual show layout. We are joined by Jody, who is our... Well, you do a lot of things for the space, I guess. You are the long-term weld zone coordinator. You've been that for a while. You are also the kiln coordinator or glass. I can't remember which.
Kiln zone, specifically the glass kiln.
Okay.
It's pretty much like metal.
Also treasurer.
And also treasurer, because it's also dealing with metal, apparently.
These are all so very similar. And then we also have, returning for, I've lost count of how many episodes, Nate Bizanson, one of our founding members. Nate, I think people know who you are, so I'm going to let Jody kind of go and give a little bit of an introduction for himself, and then we'll get into a little bit of Q&A, and we might get to cover some news towards the end of the episode here as well.
Sounds good.
Jody, you want to run us through? I mean, I gave you 3 titles, but I don't know if you want to...
I would say 3 of the many things that I've done at
the 3 that I know.
I was going to say, this is it's a little bit of a change of pace. Normally, when I'm talking about i3 stuff, I'm giving the tour and talking about i3. And the fact that everybody here, at this point, 20 weeks in, probably knows something about what i3 is. So I don't really need to do that. Seems a little weird. So I've actually been I visited i3 when we were in the Royal Oak space. I joined because I wanted to learn some things, and specifically I wanted to learn welding is what I ended up falling into. And after joining and becoming a member and learning how to weld, about a year and a half later, I was asked if I wanted to be a co-coordinator in the welding zone. Did that. The other coordinator stepped away, and I took over sole coordinatorship, and I've been doing it for, what's that, about 7 years now. I've been running the welding zone, and I can't give it away. Every time somebody comes up with a great idea, I'm like, great, here's the keys. And they're like, no, I don't want it. You do it. Because one of my favorite things, one of my passions is actually teaching. Of course, this is the United States of America. All respect to teachers, but I'm not enough of I don't have that much passion or that much masochism to take it on as a profession. So... for the past several years, I've been working as a welder professionally, and I'm now going to finish my engineering degree, and will hopefully get a job that's a little bit easier on the knees. Just in the past, about 3 years ago, I became a member of the board of directors and helped push through the expansion, or at least the beginning of the expansion. Who all knew that it was going to be as challenging as it's been. This past year, I took over as treasurer of the organization, which of course is hilarious because I'm kind of an anti-capitalist. I hate money, which is maybe why I, volunteer so much. But doing my best to get the i3's finances in order and get it all squared away. And as I've been saying, if I can do it, anybody can do it. In fact,
I appreciate the work you put into that, because I know that's been a tremendous endeavor.
My biggest goal with being treasurer is writing documentation so that literally anybody could step into it. You don't have to be fully accountant trained in order to do this job. It helps, but I want somebody who has a passion and enough of a knowledge of the organization to be able to step into this role and be able to, start off by like a cookbook, be able to follow the steps in order and just get the day-to-day stuff done. But then after a couple of months, I really do think this is a job that anybody can do. And I think, at least so far, I haven't screwed it up too bad, have I? You haven't kicked me out yet, so...
I mean, we appreciate the fact that more or less you're making an Excel sheet to do the job for us. So
automation, way of the future. I mean, after all, I got started with robotics. Actually, I got started with welding out of my enjoyment of robotics. And I'm not trying to get political, but I am a firm believer that we should let the robots do as much as they can and the rest of us do as little as we can, and then spread the wealth around.
Yeah.
So maybe that comes into, I guess, kind of a question that I would have, because you said you started as a teacher, right? So
Actually, yeah, back right out of high school, I started helping out. I mean, actually, in high school, I was what they call them PALs, peer assistance leaders. We'd go into the elementary and middle school and help kids, anything from tutoring to just playing ball to just being friends, and that kind of morphed into helping the other teachers teach their lessons. And then after I went for my associate's degree down in Texas, that's all you really need in Texas, right? I ended up picking up a somewhat career with a company called Mad Science. I was Beaker Bryant, use my middle name, and basically spent about 6 years teaching after-school science programs and in-school field trips. The company still exists, and if anybody's looking for a really cool birthday party, I don't know what they're doing during the days of COVID, but it's a really cool thing. It's a cool idea. And I really enjoyed it, but just couldn't really make any money on it. And so I went back to school, looked for something I could do a little bit more, seriously, and ended up in the welding thing, which of course is funny because the very first job I got, I was working at a bicycle place, Detroit Bikes. Yeah, there's actually Detroit Bikes is on the cover of Crane's Business. You'll see a fuzzy hair in the background with the welding machine. So after being there for just a couple of months, they realized that I had a bit of a knack for teaching people how to do stuff, especially welding. So they turned all the teaching new people who were coming in with some basic knowledge, turned over their training to me. And I was teaching, I taught several people how to weld. And I had already been kind of helping coordinate the weld zone at that point and realized I could merge the two and I could teach welding. And as I think that if Nate would tell you, I think one of his favorite things to say is that I have attempted to teach anything that moves how to weld that walks into I3, and a great many people beyond.
I was about to say, it's a point of pride for the organization, and I'm quick to point it out to any new members who come in the door. The fact of the matter that, like, I remember when I initially started, you were teaching certifications for state level exams. I think you still were, or still do. And you would have recruiters call you. And I might overblow that story, but it's a point of pride for I3. Like, hey, you guys, we got someone so good that welding job recruiters are calling him regularly to get new blood. Like,
all right, to set the record kind of straight, you're not wrong. And in fact, I still get regular calls from my old recruiter friends from when I was working full time, asking if I've got any new promising students or if I've got any old coworkers looking for work. But to be fair, welding is one of those things that it's a bit of a niche. You tend to work with union shops, but there is no welders union. And so a lot of people don't go into welding. They treat welding as part of another trade. So getting someone who's an actual fully trained welder, not just, a pipe fitter who picked up some welding or a machinist who can, squirt some metal, a real honest to goodness welder, they're hard to find these days, it seems like. And yeah, job offers, thick and heavy, anything from $12 working on a line to $25 doing aluminum muffler work or stainless steel muffler work. Somebody's going to say aluminum.
No, you seem to have answered the first question, but I'll ask it anyway because sometimes there's something that really sticks in the craw of whoever we're asking it to that they just have to take the opportunity to answer. What misconceptions would you like to clear up about what you do? Like, what do you want to set the record straight on when it comes to either welding or metalwork?
You couldn't have sent me that message. You couldn't have told me that.
I know.
I was going to say, if I recall right, I believe you've sat in on one of my classes. So I will go off. I'll rant, and we don't have that kind of time. So let's see. Probably the two biggest things that I get when I start talking to people about welding is either that it's lowbrow and easy and just whatever, it's very blow off, that it's, like just, you turning a wrench, welding, whatever. The thing is that welding is actually kind of cerebral. like just the really basics of taking the gun, aiming it at the thing, and squeezing the trigger. Yeah, those are the kind of jobs that are being roboticized pretty rapidly. But the real art of being able to melt steel with a lightning bolt. I mean, like literally, I'm shooting a lightning bolt 3 inches in front of my face. That is temperatures ranging around like surface of the sun temperatures that liquefy steel in a matter of seconds, and then keeps it in that state as long as I want until it's the shape that I want, and then I let it freeze back again. That actually takes a decent amount of paying attention, just straight up skill and straight up intelligence. I mean, I've heard on the factory floor, I was often told that the welders are the nerds of the factory. So this concept of, you know, welders being the big burly manly men thing, I'm not going to say they aren't there and that isn't a thing, but it's just the amount of finesse that goes into setting a good weld is just really fantastic. And
Beyond that, you have the weld engineers, right? So you've got like the nerds at that point.
yeah. The thing is that, thank you, Kat, for shaking the camera. There's actually very few weld engineering programs. Generally, what you get is you just get like a mechanical engineering with a weld certification or something like that. I considered doing a weld engineering program, but I'm not really interested in going back to Texas for it. And outside Dallas is where one of the major ones is in the U.S. I don't know, the whole engineering thing. I don't know. You wouldn't know anything about engineering, would you? Engineering.
I mean, you talk about lightning bolts and stuff, and I don't know that engineering is going to be that exciting for you.
Well, that's the thing too. You know, there's something to be said for being able to do the math and figure out exactly how much of the lightning bolt do you want to have. There's a lot of settings on a weld machine that involve
lightning bolt.
Really perfect. Well, I mean, in all seriousness, the difference between a weld and a plasma torch is pretty small. You have a little bit too much gas flow and a little bit too much heat, and you are now cutting holes and, you know, making cookie cutter shapes out of your metal instead of sticking it together. It's a very edge process. You're surfing that edge between liquid, gas, solid, just the whole thing. There's a lot of science involved. It's fun.
Do you want fork in a light socket, or do you want Zeus from on high?
Yeah, let your ground clamp fall off and hit your chair, and you'll get a little bit of both.
Maybe a fun bonus story for later. I have a Mortal Kombat lightning strike story that we'll have to talk about. Maybe.
It's fun to hear it.
Yeah.
Is that going to be on our "Don't Try This at Home" episode?
We haven't done that. All right, okay, it's going on the whiteboard.
I'll come on and show you how not to juggle hammers. How's that?
There you go.
I can imagine there's a lot of ways how not to juggle hammers, and only really one way on how to juggle hammers.
One of my side gigs, way back in the day, back in my kind of my science performing days, was I would go to the Ren Fair with a bag full of hacky sack juggling balls that I bought off Oriental Trading for pennies. And I would just sit under a tree juggling, and kids would come up and say, "What's that?" And then I would pull some out and hand them, and they would start playing with them, and I would teach them the basics of a 3-ball juggling. And I mean, even like 6 and 7-year-olds were kind of getting the hang of it pretty quick. And then their parents would come back and like, "Okay, sorry guys, you got to put them back now." And they're, "Aww," or you can keep them for $1 a ball plus another $1 for a hand-sewn bag to put them in.
Nice.
I paid for gas in my entry to the fair pretty much on a regular basis. Then, of course, if teenagers or adults, well, specifically if over 18s were around, there's lots of fun jokes you can make about, "Oh, sure, reach into my sack and grab some balls." You know, where they went from there.
I didn't go there. You did.
Oh, yeah, no. I was a 21-year-old smartass. Now I'm a 42-year-old smartass.
I was about to say, was there a delineation at some point that I missed?
I don't know.
The tables have turned here. Normally, Thomas is the most kind of out there one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm normally the cheeky bastard. That's my shtick.
Yeah,
So-
well, you know what? During this time that I've been spending at home, I've been eating a lot of ice cream, so I've got some serious cheat going on here.
So I'm gonna re-angle this a little bit here.
Ankle grinder.
so
I've got an ankle grinder if you want to use that.
so we I guess you talked about kind of moving into welding because of kind of financial reasons, but so why? Because there's a lot of skilled trades that you could have chosen. So why welding over or any of the other choices?
Okay. I don't know if you could tell this at all about me, but I've got a little bit of pride, and I usually pride myself on being a pretty decent student. I decided to go back to school to get a degree in. I was actually angling for an engineering degree. I went to the community college, Oakland Community here, and they had their pre-engineering program because I'm money conscious. I'll take my first couple of years at a community college before going to a 4-year. Well, their pre-engineering program involved taking at least 3 skilled trades programs, and I took machining, AutoCAD drafting, and welding. And I got A's in AutoCAD drafting, I got A's in all of my machining, and I got a freaking B plus in intro to welding. And I swore I would get revenge. And I did. I made that metal my bitch. And then I realized I'd taken 5 classes and had an associate's degree in it. And I had 2 job offers that paid pretty decent. And so I kind of stuck with it.
Nice.
So yes, doing poorly in my intro to welding class was kind of what got me hooked on it.
The main motivator per se.
Yep. Spite is
Also
the best
the fact-
motivator.
Well, also the fact that my teacher in the machine shop was all very you must keep your hands in front of you and everything. You have to have your head on at all times and must be always thinking. And then in the computer lab it was constantly if you shut your eyes for a second you may miss, and if you click the wrong button you could crash the computer or you could crash the plane that you're designing. It was all very serious. And then the guy in the welding lab was like, hey, your hands are shaking a little bit, here, drink half the beer, and then that'll calm you down a little bit, and then you can just keep welding, and it just zen.
Half before and half after.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, just the teachers in the welding shop, I will admit, were some of the most laid back, chill people. Even when they got kind of upset about somebody accidentally dropping red hot metal in their laps and catching their pants on fire. Neither here nor there, but yeah, even then they were always really chill about everything. I'm like, either there's something in these fumes, or this is just a really kind of cool thing to do.
Why not both?
Why not both? Well, I mean, I did get a raise one time for catching my pants on fire. So, okay, I was going to say, you're being quiet. Does that mean you actually want to hear the story here?
That's what they call a workplace hazard.
Well, what's really funny is I actually was there for a welding test. You see, when you get hired in, usually the first thing they do is they take you over to the welding machine. They have some sort of setup. It could be some pieces. They say, here, weld this into a cube. They could say, here's a muffler, weld it solid, or whatever. Well, in this case, it was a stainless steel muffler. And they said, all right, you claimed on your resume that you knew how to do this. So we're not going to say anything. Just grab the thing and go. Lucky for me, I don't tend to lie on my resume. I grabbed the thing and I went. Of course, the thing is, so if you weld and everything's flat down, gravity tends to make everything fall down. This wasn't flat down. This was up at an angle. So I'm sitting here with this thing, and I'm sitting here running super hot metal sideways across what's basically a wall in front of me. Where are the sparks going? Down, very far down. They were, in fact, falling down, bouncing on the floor, and catching on the cuff of my jeans, which my jeans were a little bit on the raggedy side. I hadn't been paying too close attention. It wasn't. I should have had better pants. But, whatever, I was planning on buying better pants with my first paycheck anyway. And so, yeah, my leg caught fire. I was wearing boots, So I didn't notice. Burned up an inch or so, and the guy who's given the test is like tapping me on the shoulder. Hey, kid, look down. I'm like, hold on, I've only got 6 inches left to go. And he's like, yeah, look, just look down. And so I'm like sitting here holding the thing. I lift up my mask. I look down. And I'm like, oh great, my pants are on fire. And I judge. I'm like, you know what? I've got another minute and a half before that gets past the boot. I'm okay. Put it down. Finish off the last 6 inches of weld. Tie it off. Set the gun down. Knock the flames out. I asked the guy, do you have any duct tape so I can just put over it so I can get through the rest of the day? He taps me on the shoulder again, points behind us, turn around, and there's a guy in a suit, and there's a guy in a white shirt with a tie and a clipboard. And they're like, yeah, could you come to the office, please? Like, oh, okay. I'm like, I won't bother unpacking my stuff. I'm not getting this job. They're just telling me off. Well, I went into the office, and they're like, okay, can you tell us what happened there? Because that seemed kind of intense. I'm like, well, it was a standard stainless steel. You know, I got to the end, and I was, no. Your pants, you caught fire. Like, oh, but I'm a welder. It's occupational hazard. They were a little bit afraid. I know, I shouldn't have done that. Like, so you weren't worried? No, I'm shooting lightning bolts out my fingers. I'm not that worried about catching fire. It's going to happen. Like, okay, instead of working the line for $12 an hour, how would you like to work in fabrication for $16 an hour? Okay, I'll do that. So apparently, yes, not running and screaming when you catch fire and just finishing the job apparently impresses the bosses, who I guess
Just to be
now
on
that I
fire.
think of it, might have thought more about the production than their safety. I'm not saying anything. But, hey, it was a good job while I had it.
A willingness to be on fire and not sue your employer is a sought after feature in an employee, apparently.
Especially one who's shooting lightning bolts for a living.
I won't say when or where, but I've been in situations where I had an injury occur, and I simply threw an air cast on, and I said, just don't put me in where I can drop a board on my injury, and we'll be fine. And they were like, okay. So and they're like, holy crap, you showed up, and is that possibly broken? I'm like, the x-ray wouldn't have changed anything. Throw me, where am I going, coach?
Yeah,
So,
this is America. It's not like I can stay home and still make rent.
yeah, I was like, well, I mean, yeah, there was that aspect to it, but there's definitely, I think there's kind of this weird solidarity in the trades where it's like, it's fine, rub some dirt in it, you'll be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not right. There's definitely some.
It was Thomas's pride in his work.
Yeah. I remember when things started like shuttering a few months ago. I was like, I don't want to do this because it means I can't go to work because my whole family has like worked. It's a point of pride for us. Like we work until we die. And it's not this thing where we have to. I mean, it is also we have to, but it's this thing where it's like we've just normally wound up in professions we love. Like Jody talking about welding. Like you obviously enjoy what you do as far as it goes, or you did for quite a while, and you want to move into a different arm of it. You're not moving completely out of what you were doing. You're just moving to a different aspect of it. Which we talked identities last week with Nate, and we were like, what do you do when you no longer have that because you had an injury like that, because you had something occur like that, and we just kind of said, well, you adapt that identity to go from practitioner to enabler kind of thing, and practitioner to teacher, which is actually kind of odd because I think you went, you did go you started as a teacher, then you went practitioner of a different thing, and now you're going into teacher and or management, I would assume, or now you're teacher and you're moving into kind of management and logistical support for that thing.
It's complicated.
So yeah, it is, yeah, but it's still there.
I might just be designing, the next generation of welders. Honestly, if I absolutely had my druthers, I'd finish this electrical engineering degree and see if maybe Lincoln's looking for somebody to help with their 3D printing robots, because they're using welding to 3D print stuff right now out of steel and other metals.
Yeah, sintering.
Cool.
Yeah, that's got to be a very highly sought after division now, I bet. I mean, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, it's cutting edge, and it's being done just outside of Detroit. So yeah.
I did some manu proc classes because I wanted to do I wanted to be a foreman on a shop floor. That was my huge dream is to more or less be the guy who's logistically overseeing the processes and production and things like that. I always thought that was the neatest leadership position to be in because you're making something and you're also leading people. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. So and I remember back then that was just when NASA and some aerospace had sintering, had electronic discharge, had all the crazy new stuff. So yeah, that was oof. That was
So you want to hear something fun about welding with NASA?
yeah.
The gantries that they use to support the shuttles and the launches before they take off. Until fairly recently, they used almost exclusively, they used 1960s to 70s welding technology because they didn't approve any of the more modern technologies. They hadn't passed the testing that was required for outdoor welding until the more modern metal cord wires allowed a deep enough penetration and strong enough hold, even when welding outdoors in the elements, in the blowing wind and everything that's up on those gantries. So they've only recently adopted what in the industry we would consider modern processes because, after all, it worked then. It's going to keep working, right? Well, I mean, it's true. It did. I just think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is as far as it goes. So,
kind of NASA staple of this worked in the 60s and 70s, and we don't really want to test the new stuff because that's going to be expensive. So,
yeah.
Or to be fair, some of it is true. They even when they did test the new stuff, they're like, well, it works 80%, but we needed at least 90%, or we're not going to pass it. And to be fair, they held out until they got a 98% pass rate, and then they changed. So,
yeah.
I mean, the whole space race. Not space race. That would be a little dated. But I guess these days it's kind of a more modern space race between different what's it called, for-profit companies, isn't it? I've really been following.
I was about to say my question was if you say Elon Musk in front of a camera on a podcast, you automatically turn into Joe Rogan. Because I was about to say I wish we had. I could a caption. It just says Elon Musk laughter or something like that. Because that's when you said space race, I was like, yeah, it's dated, but I mean, it's come full circle. So in that we now have the privatization of somewhat.
If you were Elon Musk, though, you'd ask if it was really a race. If only one of them was making progress.
Well, the tortoise and the hare, one of them had to take a nap for the other one to get on through, so.
Yeah. But I know, as far as it goes, if I'm remembering correctly, Nate, you are a fanatic or a fan of what is going on in our upper stratosphere. You have any opinions you'd like to weigh in on about stuff like this?
Oh boy. So I stayed up way too late the other night listening to Apollo 11 in real time because, we're at the, 51st anniversary of the whole thing. And no, I'm a fan. I haven't followed it closely enough to consider myself a commentator or anything like that. But I just think it's getting to again be a glorious time to be a fan of space, like it was back then when everything was possible and everything was moving forward. And then we really got into this slump. Once we were on the moon, we kind of slowed down, and we did the shuttle thing for a while and slowed down, and nothing really advanced for a while. And now just recently with I think the several viable commercial competitors being in the market, it's very different from what anyone, especially like sci-fi in the past, always thought of space exploration as being maybe not even a governmental endeavor, more like a human, like all of humanity endeavor, like the entire planet pulls together and does this because we are a spacefaring species. And it's become very much fragmented and weird. I think, compared to that. But that's, it's just another way of solving the problems. So we're looking at, in a couple days here, the SpaceX Crew Dragon is going to undock and come back. Much has been said about how, what kind of a milestone that is. But what I love is that again, we've been talking about space tourism for half a century. And then we had, I guess the Russians took a tourist probably, what was that, a decade or so ago. But I don't consider it real until you've got, 20 a year or something like that, like real serious numbers. And it's just starting to look realistic. Whereas a lot of these things were pie in the sky, or not even. It's like, what would the entire species of humanity benefit from having space tourism? Well, we wouldn't. But commercial space will. And that, to kind of a little selfish side, that's really interesting in a way.
Yeah. The best case scenario for a lot of those kind of projects was that it would be a one-off kind of thing, or an extremely low volume kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, a hotel does not survive because it's an extremely low volume kind of thing. They've got hundreds of rooms and guests in there all the time. That's how they're commercially viable. I think until you reach a point where, and we've said this about reusable spacecraft for years, that, when you fly somewhere, they don't take the 747 and sink it into the ocean and build a new one for your next flight. That it would be very expensive. Things get commercially viable when they're reusable, when there's a lot of flights being taken, so on and so forth. And as much as it would be cool to explore for exploration's sake, I feel like the will to do that, the political will to do that, is fickle. Whereas money continues to be green, and if something is commercially viable, it will happen.
Isn't that what they always say? The first trillionaire will be the person who manages, or the company that manages to start harvesting asteroids, or something along those lines.
The folks with the stake in harvesting asteroids have said that, yes. I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't know. That's something I'm not qualified to speak on.
Just on a purely theoretical note, though, if the asteroids are as rich in whatever that we say they are, and we bring back a crap ton of it, it's like learning how to turn lead into gold, because now we've all of a sudden, won't that just by supply demand laws, won't we just flood the market with it's not cheap.
That's some extraordinarily expensive lead.
Yeah, I was about to say, I understand, but at the same time, if we say they come back with a metric rocket ton of titanium or something, some sort of unobtainium that we only have 5 pounds of in the entirety of the planet Earth, kind of thing. Yeah, exactly, and they come back with its massive rocket, and they land 2,000 pounds of it. Doesn't that then, I get they had to go all the way to space to get it, but then they're like, we can do this again and again and again. And at some point, when you've got 10,000 pounds, is it now less expensive than it was when we only had 5 pounds of it on Earth?
Well, remember that there's a difference between there being 10,000 pounds of it and there being 10,000 pounds of it in a silo that they get to portion out as they want.
De Beers, of course, sorry.
Well, so there's stuff that's valuable because it's rare, like gold. Yeah. And then there's stuff that's valuable because it's chemically useful, like platinum. The reason the catalytic converter on your car is likely to get sawzalled off and hawked at a junkyard is because platinum is extremely useful and extremely valuable. And it's so expensive because it's rare, but it'll continue to be useful as catalysts for the foreseeable future until somebody comes up with a replacement. So, if you can find an asteroid, I don't believe there's platinum asteroids out there, but, I'm sure it's present in some amounts. That would have value even if you, quote unquote, saturate the market. There's still the need, the demand is so vast. And you'd be able to put catalysts on more things. The demand is going to increase as the price goes down. So I don't know. That would be a good problem to have. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but sorry, Nate, didn't mean to step on you.
For a bunch of these rare earth elements to not be rare because we're not getting them from Earth. All sorts of stuff. Batteries would love more. Let's see. I mean, lithium is everywhere, but like cobalt, some of the other things that are used to make the electrodes are fairly common on asteroids, and yeah, that would be huge.
Yeah.
And if one nation controlled them, that would be a bit of a technological step up.
Well, yeah, right now, the largest lithium deposits are in, like, is it Argentina or Peru? Like, there's a kind of a couple of saline, like, brine lakes that have high lithium concentration, and China. And that's basically it. It's like there's ridiculous amounts of lithium in seawater, but it's not, the price is nowhere near to where it would be economical to extract it. And then you've got all of the other, like I said, the cobalt, the manganese, the other elements that are used with the lithium to make the electrodes and the batteries. And some of those are also, they're unevenly distributed. It's not like uranium that's everywhere. Yeah, there are some places where there's more of it, but pretty much everybody can have a uranium mine if they want it. Very few places can have a cobalt mine. So it would, if the asteroid capability is unevenly distributed as well, but differently distributed, then it's going to change the political power based on the riches involved.
Well, getting away from asteroids for a second too. I mean, you talk about like hydrogen is one of the most abundant elements in the universe, right? And it's something that is, in theory, hydrogen fuel cells are great technology, but right now, right, it's we're making it mostly from hydrolysis, which is a not very energy efficient way of generating a fuel. It's net negative, right? If you want to then turn it back into electricity for motive purposes, but to be able to collect that from somewhere where it's abundant in it just by itself would be potentially valuable too. I don't know what the calculus looks like for the energy required to go and retrieve it and return it, but if you can get that to a cost-effective level.
It doesn't compress very densely, so I'm going to guess that one's economically poor. But yeah, I don't even think of hydrogen as a fuel source. It's more like a battery that you charge in one place and discharge in another. All batteries have a net negative round-trip efficiency, but we still use them because being able to store energy is useful.
Yeah.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So, it is getting later on in the show, and I did want to talk. It's not like 10:25 yet, people. I'm not doing the outro. That's not what I'm doing like I normally do. But wow, I can't reuse any of my segues. I have to curate my script carefully. I can't reuse that because then people think, oh, it's over. No, it's not over. We still got another 20 minutes. Chill. We had some news stories this week that we wanted to touch on, and we did most of the space stuff because, as Nate said, it's the Apollo 11 splashdown anniversary. He was listening to the live cast. So we have some news stories here that we wanted to cover that I thought were really interesting, and some of the things that we just should cover. I've one in particular I'll save for last as kind of the closing statement from everybody because I want to hear. Actually, I'll tell you guys now so you can start thinking about it. The closeout tonight will be talking about the memory of Grant Imahara. I don't think being in a makerspace, I don't think there's one of us, like me as a woodworker, Matt as an engineer, Jody as a welder, and Nate especially as ELAB's coordinator. I don't think there's a corner of making Grant left untouched with his work, that Mythbusters left untouched. But Grant, especially being a Mythbuster, being in that space, in that sector of where he was with Industrial Light and Magic and some of his accomplishments, he left all aspects of making, of craft, of trades touched by his legacy. And so in saying that, I want you guys to think on kind of your favorite moment, or from Mythbusters episode, from his work in robotics, to anything you can think of that particularly spoke to you in your making, and be ready to share it with us at the end of the episode here. But because we didn't last week, we weren't prepared. No one was prepared. 49 is too young, as far as I'm concerned. So we weren't prepared last week to address it. This week, we've all had time to think on it, reflect on it. So if you guys want to share, please. That's what we'll be doing at the end. But for now, we have some more interesting things in science and tech that have kind of been going on. As a foodie, I wanted to share this one because this is interesting. It came out of caviar, of all things. There is a new fish hybrid that was thought impossible. They took the Mississippi paddle mouth or something like that, and they introduced it to sturgeon, and they made something called the struttlefish. And so, I mean, it's on CNET, it's on CNN. Basically, they're like, hey, sturgeon populations are decreasing. What do we do? And they're like, oh, let's toss this American fish in there to encourage gynogenesis, which is where the female asexually reproduces and creates a clone of itself through natural processes. And they came back to the pool and went, wait a minute, these aren't your kids. They're looking at it, they're like, who is the father? Because this is weird. And they pulled hybrid sturgeons out of the pond, and they're like, scientifically, this has never happened before. And so it was really freaky. They're potentially valuable in technology because they eat plankton and trap carbon. Was the huge thing that I had been reading and going over this story. So I mean, they used to do this at SynShop in the Gray Noise. So I mean, we'll just go round table, opinions, thoughts on this. Is there anything interesting that sticks out to you as far as it goes? For me, it was the caviar, because again, foodie, cooking, stuff like that. I mean, do I look like I don't eat? But either way. So what about you guys? You guys got anything on this one?
I would just say that I had never really thought of plankton as a carbon capture approach. But I guess, I mean, in that regard, isn't any herbivore a carbon capture mechanism?
Depends on what happens to their bodies after they go. There was a rather famous gentleman that I'd have to Google in order to remember his name, but he said that give him a tanker full of iron and he'd give you another ice age. Basically said that if you went out into the ocean and seeded it with iron compounds, that you'd basically cause such an enormous plankton bloom with the algae and the plankton and everything, that they'd catch so much carbon and then fall to the bottom and drop it on the ocean floor that you could just, it was just stupid the amount of carbon that could be captured this way. Of course, they since have figured out that would probably cause a lot of other problems, as anybody who's tried to play with entire biomes has discovered. But oh no, yeah, the idea of plankton catching carbon, big time.
Yeah. So I think it was. Oh, go ahead, Nate.
What jumped out at me just from what you read was the phrase "never before happened in history."
No, in science, not in history.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I call bullshit.
Yeah, no. Well, this is the first observed case of it, not that it never happened.
Well, so here's the really interesting thing. Apparently, the fish that they use exists exclusively in history, probably somewhere 50 million years ago, because one of the fish that they used was in the Mississippi Basin, and they were like, "Oh, let's just take this American fish," and the other fish was in Russia. And so, like, we're talking, like, so human history, which is yes, perspective and privileged, but at the same time, like, I think that's why I went for in scientific observation rather than in history, because probably somewhere by probability and chance, like, there's probably been this combination of genetics in marine biology somewhere. But and the other cool thing they were observing is the fishes had different levels of hybrid, which was, like, really mind-blowing. There was, like, one that was mostly sturgeon and one that was mostly this other paddlefish or paddlemouth or whatever the hell it was. And so it was like that you could see the whole evolutionary chain or not evolutionary chain, but family tree kind of thing in the different examples, which I thought was really cool.
I think the one thing that really jumped out at me as you were reading that story, though, was the managing to breed with only females. There was a specific term for that. Wasn't that basically the plot of the first Jurassic Park movie?
Yeah, there's a scientific basis for it.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying that was the first thing that jumped out at me. It was like, I've heard that somewhere before, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't in science literature.
Now we have to change it to never before outside of Hollywood.
I don't know. I think you're going to have to modify your definition of science literature to include some Michael Crichton books, because pretty good.
Yeah, you're not wrong there. You know.
Damn it, Jim! I'm not a doctor. I'm a podcast host. So, me and Matt were talking earlier this week. I watched too much Donut, so the clickbait has just seeped into me as far as it goes.
Find a way to actually convert that into views, because right now we have clickbait but no views.
Yeah. I want to ask what
kind of
Donut is, but I don't think I want to actually know.
So number 10 will shock you. Either way. So Matt, I think you had a story here that you wanted to share.
A little bit about. So we the Apollo 11 splashdown and Mars launch windows both kind of slide to into one with kind of the space topics we were talking about earlier. So on July 24th, 1969, Apollo 11 safely splashed down in the ocean after the astronauts successfully walked on the moon. But more recently, you might notice there's been a lot of rocket launches bound for Mars recently. You've got the UAE, China, and the United States all either having done launches or doing launches soon. And the reasoning for that is kind of interesting when you look at how the orbits of the Earth and Mars compare to each other. There are very specific time windows when it makes the most sense, both from a time perspective and a fuel volume and thus weight perspective, to actually do your launches. We are right now sitting in a very comfortable valley for the amount of time that these kind of launches take. The next time that it will be this short of a trip between Earth and Mars based on the orbits will be sometime in early 2023 or late 2033. Sorry, late 2033. So we're looking at 13 years until the next time this is really going to be feasible in the amount of time that we're looking at here, which is why you've got so many space agencies, jumping to do this. And the question, I guess, if you want to kind of have an opinion for each of the news articles here coming from our borrowing from SynShop, what is this gonna look like in 2033, the next time we have this window, right? Who's going to be doing these launches? Are we even going to care that the window is this small, because we'll just be able to go whenever we want anyway?
I mean, at that point, I'm imagining just an astronaut in the cabin just flicking all the switches and then waiting for the big red button and just going, yeet, and just like pushing that line, like, because that's the generation that it will be, and it will just be goddamn hilarious to me. I'll be sitting over there like in front of the,
all the teenagers will be rolling their eyes because their dad just said yeet.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll just be sitting there on the fucking couch, like watching it, just like fucking just yep. I mean, I'll be laughing, but yeah.
13 years isn't actually all that long. I mean, it's a while, but it's not like, I mean, it's not exactly like a whole generation precisely.
All right, we're gonna have to take out bets on whether the term yeet is still with us in 2033.
I will keep it alive.
I don't think the giant cockroaches, which will be the most advanced life form still on the surface of the Earth in 2033, will care.
Yeah, well, they might use the past tense of yote, for what happened to the rest of the humans once they finally caught them.
I'm pretty sure, like, as the cockroach warlord is about to throw me off a cliff, I'll just be like, wait, do me one favor. Grant a dying man's wish.
I lose a bet if I get thrown off a cliff before you say this.
Exactly. And it'll just be incoherent clicking and murmuring just from the multiple jaws. Just...
Yeah, they can't pronounce that. You lose.
Damn it! I'll just we're fine. Damn it!
So I think that was it for news, unless there's any closing comments.
I mean,
those were kind of big heavy hitters.
We wanted to be serious, and I couldn't. I
missed that memo.
Yeah, exactly. I did too. I missed that whole speech. Ooh. Well.
Yeah, it just yeeted right out of your head.
Yeah, yep. Yoted right out of my head. Nobody wants to be that guy. No one wants to be that person.
Well, actually, the past tense is yacht.
Listen, you're not cruising at that point, you're sailing.
Okay, so this puts us in a tough spot, because we got 8 minutes left in the show, and we have to take it from laughing about what the past tense of yeet is to talking about Grant.
Oh.
So, how do you want to do that?
To be fair, I think based on the media that I've seen surrounding him, he probably would have appreciated it.
Yeah,
he had a sense of humor.
He probably would have said, "Yoted off this mortal coil." So. I'm sorry. I love him, but yes, I will say he was forever a comic, and he was always an entertainer as far as it goes, no matter what he was doing. I think I'll probably open with mine. My favorite, as far as it goes, my favorite thing he's probably done was the sword testing episode on Mythbusters. And he was doing things with cutting a bullet and a lot of folded steel. And I think that did they ever upgrade? I forget that episode. I think it went they used a cheap sword and then they like a stage prop. And did they ever upgrade to the real thing? Because I thought they had in the experiment to like, if we don't pull out the big guns, we'll have all the hate mail coming in or whatever else. Or something. So I don't know if they ever went to the folded steel solution. I'd have to pull back up the episode and look through it. Yeah, I'm getting side eye from the YouTube chat. Oopsie. Either for that comment, I'm reading back. Ooh, things not to do. Either way, so yeah, they did the slice a bullet in half, or the they were doing like high speed sword testing and realized to do what they were doing they needed like so many pneumatic measurement or whatever, like so much speed that was like next to impossible, but they did it anyway, and it was like literally flat, like literal flash of the blade at like superhuman speeds to do this thing, and Grant was the one designing the arm and the holding mechanism and things like that to get this test right. I believe if I'm remembering the episode correctly, it was Grant, because I remember I'll go back and I'll double check my methods, but I attached that memory to Grant. So
I guess I can go next there. Yeah. So I think a lot of these stories are probably going to center around robotics kind of things, because that was one of his big specialties and real passions. So I was fortunate enough to have done first robotics as a student in high school for all 4 years that I was in high school, and Grant had done several things with first because it's a natural kind of mesh fit, right? I mean, it's exactly the kind of thing that he really enjoyed. He did a lot of BattleBots kind of stuff, and this was while we always had to explain to people it was not BattleBots, it was close enough to fall into kind of his umbrella. And he had done several kind of different events where he had either gone to competitions or had visited with teams. I think he even mentored some teams out in the Los Angeles area, probably. And that was kind of an interesting thing because Mythbusters was really cool. I love Mythbusters, but this was like seeing him working with teams was like the closest thing to like, I do that on a day-to-day basis in like my school career, so it's a lot more kind of a direct connection kind of thing than I had with Mythbusters. As much as I love Mythbusters, I wasn't really cutting bullets in half with a sword or blowing up nearly as much stuff as they were.
Nearly as much.
Yeah, well, relative.
Your turn, Jody.
Well, all right, I'll admit, I kind of resented Grant when I first saw him because he replaced Scotty, the Mistress of Metal, the welder of the team.
Of course, it's me.
Scotty went away, and we had this kind of geeky guy coming in. I'm like, okay, Scotty, why? I'm like, and then okay, grudgingly, after seeing some of the builds and learning some of the personality, I came to appreciate Grant. And honestly, some of the stuff that ended up being made, especially the robotic stuff, it's really cool. I was really impressed. He wasn't a welder.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. And just in time. And no, you had closing remarks, Jody?
No, I really appreciated it. I just thought it was amusing that my first experience was, but where did the Mistress of Metal go? I like Scotty. Scotty's the welder. I like her.
That's what she on for.
Second season. Third season, I believe it was
Okay.
Grant.
Nate, what do you got for us?
I never met the guy, so I don't have much of an opinion. I'm going to engage in a little bit of foreshadowing for a future episode when we talk about Red Bull creation, though, to say that I have met Scotty because she was one of the judges the first year. But I also want to suggest we should get Norline on the show because Grant did consulting or advising or some function like that with Megabots. And so I don't know. I don't want to talk about somebody I've never met. I would like to hear that from someone who has.
Yeah. That's fair. And let's see.
About outro time, we're
Yeah,
down to 1 minute here.
I was about to say, let me see. SynShop, no. So we are at the end of the show here, folks. I will give my starting spiel, but I'll more or less say the first reminder, because as people still have time to tune over, we now have the link in the description. Yay! We always have put the link in the description. But we'd like to remind you that we partner with the SynShop, located at 1075 American Pacific Drive, Suite C in lovely Henderson, Nevada. And link below is the YouTube channel where you can tune in to continue the conversation on making and hacking with Crux, who was watching the Twitch stream not a while ago, and the Mighty Pong. With that, remember to make something wonderful and stay your amazing selves. But before we sign off here and Rob takes us off air, I'd also like to just let people know that if you'd like to be guests on the show, reach out to us via email, Slack, or just posting YouTube comments until we respond. We'll figure out somehow. And anyone who'd like to more or less submit things for consideration for us to put on the show, tweet at us at i3Detroit, hashtag make something wonderful. And we'll see if we can't get it on the show and yell at us until we do feature your thing on the show, because sometimes we forget. Matt, would you have anything to add in there?
my usual spiel about how you can find i3 Detroit on all of your favorite social media platforms. And if you'd like to support us financially, i3detroit.org/donate is the link that you want to be visiting with your dollars.
And if there's a platform we're not on, it's not actually your favorite.
There's no way it could be your favorite if we're not on it.
No.
So, I want to thank our guest Jody, and as well as Nate. Nate, we've been hinting at this episode and saying we should be doing it forever, and we were going to try to broach it tonight, but it went all over the place. So we will have a dedicated episode at some point for the Red Bull Challenge when all the artifacts have been gathered and the stars align. But we will have it. So I promise you that, because I feel like I cheaped you out tonight. So either way, everybody, stay wonderful as far as it goes. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Rock, go ahead. Play us off.
Do we actually have outro music? I don't even know.
I don't know. That's something I should look into. Normally,
we can't really play us off if we don't. We need like a little piano thing.
yeah. I mean, that'd be entertaining. I'll hunt some down, but either way, the witty banter until we just eventually fade out and he goes, and you're off.
That's where we go in, really.
Yeah.
Blissfully unaware.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mel says she hears me.